Hey Wargamers, it's Mike from epicduckstudios here, and today I'm going to be painting an Elvspon from the Vaettir race of Tor Gaming's Relics. I've started by simply priming the model white, and I'm going to be base coating the entire model with a dark blue, in this case Willow game color Imperial Blue. Tor Gaming was kind enough to furnish the Tabletop Media Co-op with several Relics starter sets, including the Vaettir starter set, which I'm painting this model from. So you will see a few different Relics-based painting tutorials in the near future, as well as some games coming up after that. This particular miniature has a lot of little tentacles near the bottom, and it's important to make sure you get paint in between them and up underneath them. It's really easy to miss a spot. I've attached the model to a cork using a single pin, which I've super glued both to the model and the cork to make sure the model doesn't pivot randomly while I'm painting it. If you want to mount your model to the base before painting, just be aware you're probably going to get paint on the basing material. Next, I'm grabbing a light blue, in this case game color electric blue. I'm just going to start blocking in my highlights very roughly. This is going to look almost a little bit cel shaded. There's really going to be two colors on the model and no transitions between them at this time. Basically, I'm making a very rough version of the highlight, which I'll blend back later. You can see there's nothing subtle or clean about this method. It is a very stark transition from a very dark blue to a very light blue. The whole Vaettir race for Relics has a really cool elemental feel to it. This guy's pretty much a pure energy elemental, but there are some great models that represent fire elementals, earth elementals, ice elementals, and the leaders tend to have a little bit of an insect-like or tree-like appearance to them, which is really neat. What's great with that is it tends to make the Vaettir models really useful for other gaming systems as well. I could see putting this guy on the table in Frostgrave or Dungeons & Dragons with no problems. I want to highlight the ends of each of these sort of energy tendrils coming over his head, as well as the entire face region to make it a focal point of the miniature. Now I'm simply going to mix the two shades of blue on the wet palette to get an intermediate shade, which I'm then going to use to start blending these two very stark blues together. I've also added some water to this so that it is rather thin, and that's going to allow it to be a little bit translucent, which will help with the blending of the two blues by allowing each of the shades to show through just a little bit. I'm finding that may have muted the light blue highlights a little bit too much, so I'm going to go ahead and just revisit them briefly. With this sort of organic energy kind of look that these models have, it's hard to say they're either one or the other. I find I do a lot of sort of back and forth blending to make the colors really work the way I want them to. Sometimes I'll think an area is too light or too dark and I'll go the other way with it after the fact. So it's really not so much step by step as a lot of other things I do are, as it is just getting a feel for the model and working back and forth until I'm happy with the result. Here again, I'm just making sure the face is brighter than the surrounding region so that it becomes a focal point on the miniature. Now I want to really start driving these highlights, so I'm going to add some white to the light blue. I'm going to do this in two places on my wet palette, so there's going to be some pure white as well as some white and light blue mixed together. I'm basically going to visit all of the highlights with the very light blue here first, and then I'm going to go back over them again at the very, very tips with pure white, just to make them really, really pop in a few specific points. As I noted before, I'm just taking that pure white now off the palette and just hitting the very, very tips of these sort of energy bits, just to make them really kind of seem like they're, you know, energetic. Some of the transitions between the different shades of blue can be pretty stark, so I'm going to go back to the wet palette and pick up just different shades and kind of work them in between the sort of like the stark delineations of the different colors to try and smooth things out. This is one of the great things about using a wet palette, is that all the colors you've been working with are basically available to you as long as you're painting. So you need to go back and grab a little bit of a color that you worked with previously. It's not dried out or unavailable anymore. And especially because I thin these all with water and they all have a little bit of a glaze consistency to them, they work really well for sort of going on in thin coats to tie different blocks of color together. Right at about this point, I decided that the jump between the sort of the mid-tone blue and the dark blue I'd use was just too far of a jump. I'm losing a little bit of saturation from the white being worked in as well. So I've picked up a medium tone blue, in this case, Willow Game Color Magic Blue, and I'm just gonna work it in between the two, you know, the very, very distinct shades of blue. And because of that, I'm also then gonna have to go back and work some of the blending back onto this new shade of blue because I didn't really account for that before. But you can see already that this new blue I'm working in is much higher in saturation. It's giving this a more vibrant, almost like a propane flame kind of appearance now. So I'm just working my way around the model and working this in between the darkest blue and that mid-tone blue I created earlier. Just so there's one interstitial color that, again, has a little more saturation to it as well, so it just brightens the whole model up. Or doesn't really brighten it up, but livens it up. And technically white is as bright as you can get, but white is also a little bit dull. And when you do mix white in with another color, it tends to dull that color a little bit. You don't get the same kind of pop from it. So you can see here that this new blue is more bluey than, you know, the light blue with a little bit of white mixed into it is. At this point, I'm pretty happy with most of the blue work, so I'm going to grab some mid-tone green, in this case game color foul green. I'm just going to base coat the eyes with it. For whatever reason, I decided to finish the eye sockets earlier with white paint on the undersides. Did a really good job of bringing attention to the face, but unfortunately painting the eyes now, I end up covering up that white area. I will go back with the white after the fact and correct this. I just got a little bit overzealous with it earlier and ended up hitting details that I wasn't ready for. Specifically a problem because these eyes are so long and narrow, they're basically little slits in the face. So it is a little bit tricky to get the brush in without getting any color on the surrounding area. I mean, it could be done with a lot more patience, and especially if I was doing it off camera where I can have a little bit more control because I can paint closer to my face. When I am painting for the camera, I am painting basically at arm's length though, and it does make it a little bit harder for me to do some of these smaller details with the kind of precision I would like. Alright, with the mid-tone green down, I'm going to grab livery green from Game Color, which is a nice bright green, and just add some highlights to each eye. This paint is a little bit on the thin side, so I am going back to visit each eye over and over again and building the color up in layers. Now I'm going back and grabbing the light blue off the palette and underlining the eyes again where I covered up my white underlines previously. And with that, the Elvspon is complete. Thanks for watching, and as always, do something epic. And of course, thanks Torque Gaming for the miniatures. Hey, thanks for watching my video. If you liked that one, why don't you check out some battle reports right over here, or check out more epic hobby content right over here. If you really like what I'm doing and want to support my creative efforts, I really urge you to become one of my supporters on Patreon. You can find out more about that right here. Thanks for watching.